I gotta start, I guess, with the obvious. I mean, where did the idea come from for this?
So it's an idea that's definitely got come a lot out of life and experience of what we've been through. But the initial spark was actually you seeing someone in a. Ben used to work in an off license.
Yeah, which is a shop that sells alcohol. I've told this story abroad before and got into trouble using the word off license. People were like, a what? But yeah, like a pub, but you can't drink in it. So there's this. It was a really small shop, and obviously you got to kind of know the locals and stuff. And there's this one guy who very sadly lost his daughter in a car accident shortly after her birthday, in fact. Kind of seeing the way that kind of changed him and kind of distorted him was really horrible and compelling. And I was on my own in that shop quite a lot, so I was able to write quite a lot. So I sort of started writing what's actually kind of the story in the film between Rob and the parents, in a way, and that sort of sense of the people who are left behind and their dependency on each other. But it didn't. It kind of ran aground long before it kind of got anywhere, and you just sort of put that idea away. And then kind of later, we kind of lost people ourselves, and kind of experiencing it from the inside rather than seeing it happen to someone else. You kind of realise kind of what that poor man must have been going through, and just that kind of like that incredible. The mess, like from the outside, it just seems like a kind of a coldness and a sadness and a shutting down. But from the inside, grief is multicoloured and terrifying and wonderful and appalling, and it's like it's everything all at once. And kind of, I suppose it's sort of out of that really that Nina kind of, like you start, like, I suppose rather than it being a thing about someone who isn't there, you kind of realise the person you're grieving for is more there than anyone else. Like, they are the only person who's there for you. And so, yeah, she kind of shoulder barged her way into the script. That's sort of really where that kind of all kind of came from.
So then, in terms of the tone for Nina, I mean, that's so important to, obviously, the whole tone of the film. Yeah. How did you find that kind of, I mean, obviously, sarcasm and everything else, I mean, there's an oddly endearing quality to that whole character. Where did that come in?
How did we find endearing sarcasm in our characters, Chris?
I mean, some of it comes from us, but also, so some of it comes from people that we know and
loved,
I suppose a lot of it's kind of like actually that's something. It's a characteristic that we really like, and enjoy, and she just seemed like Nina was kind of. She wasn't fully formed, but she was definitely speaking in that voice from the get-go.
Yeah, I think we're both very drawn to that kind of tough love. I guess those people who keep you on your toes, and the love that they give you, it comes with spikes, and that almost makes it the thing that you cherish most. So yeah, I guess that's where Nina comes from. We both kind of love her. So yeah,
that's awesome. I mean, I guess that leads me to wonder just how you gave direction to the cast for this, because I don't mean to say this, the cast is amazing. Obviously, they must have pulled great performances, but how much of that was, fleshed out by you guys talking to them?
I mean, it's a collaboration. I mean, that was the kind of, to be honest, it's, I mean, the whole process, right, particularly with the actors, you kind of go, that actually sort of starts with the casting director, and kind of like we had amazing casting director Emily Tillelli, who not only kind of helped us find these particular actors, but also helped create kind of an audition atmosphere where we were right from the get-go kind of really playing with people and being really collaborative.
Yeah, the opportunity, the space and the opportunity to play and not to feel like this is the one, you've got to get it right and then we will judge you. It's like, let's all just have let's have a tryout, let's see what we do, and if you've got ideas then do it, because we want to see it. And, Yeah, it was interesting. Who was it saying? I think it's Quentin Tarantino saying about advice he got from Harvey Keitel, which was when you audition actors, let them do a first take without giving them any direction. And that's something we've just always done, and definitely Emily loves doing that as well, where you're just like, no, let's see what you've got. And so, like, for instance, Abby coming in, she did, her take on Holly was completely different to what we'd imagined before how Holly would be as a person, and it was so much more interesting. And it was like, oh, this is really exciting, and we could totally see how Holly can be that person and not be the person that we'd been talking about before. And how that was actually a more interesting character than what we'd come up with so far.
So it's always a conversation, which I think, like, partly comes out of it being the two of us, but the way we like to work is always in that it's never kind of like, this is how you do it. It's kind of like, well, what do you think? And then they go, well, we think this. And you're like, oh, that's great. I like this bit. Let's follow that bit. What do you think about that bit? And then they go, well, I like this bit about that bit. And then you kind of, suddenly you've gone kind of 7 steps over there, and it's much more interesting over there than it is over there. It's like that. But also, I mean, it was also quite handy, wasn't it, with having the two of us, because the three of them had very different ways of taking notes, and what they needed from us was very different. So
they each had their own different way of preparing, and Abby would listen to music. She had like a whole playlist that she had of music that she'd worked out different tracks to be listening to before different scenes. And for like the first day, that was sort of shutting us out a little bit, and we were like, what is it you're actually listening to? And then she shared, she gave us the full playlist and exactly what scenes she was thinking of, what was going where. And then suddenly that was a really useful tool to be able to direct her with, because we were able to just talk about the music, and that being such a great way of talking about emotion and like the stage of where the character's at. And when you're giving her notes, Abby just wants a single word. She just wants you to say, do this. Whereas Kian wants lots of talk, and he wants to talk about it loads. And he also has a thing of he likes to switch it on as soon as the camera is rolling. And before that point, he's completely different, because he's like a bouncing puppy dog. If you were casting like live action Winnie the Pooh, he would be Tigger. So he, you walk up on set and you're like, have we miscast this? Is this going to go horribly wrong? Because he's this wonderfully bouncy man. He's always trying to make jokes, and so like for so many of the scenes, where there's all the intimacy, the girls have got dressing gowns, and he would turn up, and every day he'd have a different onesie to be wearing. And he actually he did have a tiger onesie. He did have a tiger onesie. Yeah. And so this bouncy man, and yet as soon as you turn, as soon as you're shouting action, he's like, boom, totally there.
Yeah, totally different.
And such a wow. It was always such a great experience to be watching him do his stuff. And then Fiona would have really long, deep talks every night to her about life and death and everything. Like the most fascinating conversations. And we still have them with her as well. Yeah. And she's an amazing actor, and she's incredibly good at reading people and their body language, and we cannot hide a thing from her. So she'd literally just turn around, look at us, be like, that wasn't any good, was it? And we'd be like, no, it's fine, it's good. And she'd just be like, no, I need to do this again. And so like you just wouldn't have to actually say anything with her. She'd just look at you and be like, good. And get really excited. When we had that sense of, you know what, that's fucking great. She was also like, great, I know I'm on the right track. And you didn't really have to say anything. It was great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you find between, you guys have done shorts before this is your first feature film. Did your style change? What changed between doing those two, or what have you learned coming out the other end of this?
I think we've learned so much actually making a feature. It's that weird thing of, we always used to have when you make shorts, the people always say that on a feature film, the first week is always hard, and then you get into a rhythm, and then everything is you really like, things really pick up in after that first week. The first week's really difficult, and you're sitting there going, well, we've only made short films. We only ever get a first week, so it's always been difficult.
Normally the first weekend.
Yeah, first weekend. First 2 days, it's not even like you've got into a rhythm. You're just literally having to get something done, and hopefully you'll get it done in the short space of time you've got. And we never quite got there with the feature in terms of having a rhythm that just went ding. Oh right, cool. Now it was really tricky every single day.
Yeah.
And there was always a different challenge every single day. And actually, I think in a way, I don't know. There's always that thing with filmmaking, isn't there, where you're kind of like, if it's too easy, is the film going to be too easy, and it's not actually going to be that enjoyable in the end, just because you're like, well, yeah, that was all right. That was pretty simple. Where this was like, no, this is really hard. And we really love the result that has come out of it. Yeah,
but we did actually, kind of in terms of it being really hard, we sort of had a manifesto that we kind of drew up with another filmmaker, a friend of ours called Guy Ducker, which is kind of predicated on the idea that all of the kind of like the sensible things that people do to make the process of making a film easier.
Yeah, to cut out the risk. So you're kind of like, okay, so one of the risky things is, people wanting to actually see the film, and so the best thing you can do is cast a big name in it, in a role that they might not actually be suited to, but it means that people will want to come and see the film.
Yeah, or kind of like scripts are hard, so, if you do like the 3-act structure, then that's, audiences understand that, so that's going to give you a safety net of, if nothing else, that the down point's going to be here, and then it's going to be fine, and people will like that.
Yeah, and if you're going to shoot, then you shoot lots of coverage, and you make sure you've got your wide shot and then your mid shot, and
so you've got change it in, you've got all those options.
Yeah, and we were basically like, well, we're not allowed to do any of those things then.
So we weren't allowed to. Everyone had to audition. And we weren't allowed to use the 3-act structure, and we weren't allowed to shoot coverage, and there were some other rules in there as well, which were all designed basically to make it as hard as possible and to make it as much of a risk. Like we one of the rules was we had to put our own money into it, so that every day you kind of, and there were some times on this film
where you're going, oh shit, I've just lost all of the money that I've ever saved up in my life.
Yeah, it is like, it's you're setting fire to yourself every day. Well, indeed, your flat burnt down 2 weeks before we started to shoot.
Yeah.
And so, and I think what's great is that, and a bit terrifying for how we're going to live the rest of our lives, is that it feels like that thought process really did pay off, is that kind of like there is this tension and there is this sense of risk that I think the audience can feel. And I think, like, people watching the film, you can feel them slightly sit forward, like, where the fuck is this going? Like, what are you like what is going to happen next? And like, you're on this kind of high wire, and it's like, well, can we follow you on that high wire? And are you going to fall off? And is this film going to be a disaster? And when you get to the end, and it's like, whether you totally love it or whatever, at least you feel kind of like, yeah, shit, you took me over the high wire. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah. One of the worst phrases you ever hear when you're making stuff is, well, for the budget and the time that we had. We did really well there, and you're like, nobody watching this is ever going to be sitting there going, well, you know what, for the budget and the time that you had, that's a fairly effective piece of, you're like, no, it's got to be either fucking great or you've got to do it again.
Yeah, there's no Oscar for scheduling, and there's a reason for that.
So then, I heard about the whole fact that you guys raised funds to do part of the film, but that the whole idea was that you didn't want to affect your actual filmmaking. So how did you strike that balance? What did that mean for the production?
So, I mean, to be honest, actually, when we first wrote it, we were just expecting to make it ourselves with the money that we'd saved up, and that everybody we ever spoke to within the industry would say, Don't do this! Don't do this! What? And so we were kind of cackling because we were really enjoying the sense of doing something that is just as mental as possible. And, well, it's like, this is really good fun and we're going to really enjoy doing it. And we're just expecting to make it with a couple of DSLRs that we own and the mic that we own, and you're just like, great, well, it's just going to be us 2 and 3 people in a room. And thankfully, people really liked the script. And our producer, Cassandra, she'd been waiting on a new draft of a romantic comedy we were writing for her. And instead, we sent her that going, sorry, we're going to be making this instead. And just expecting her to never want to speak to us again. But she loved it. And so we were in the position where we asked her to put money in as well, which she did, and so we already had a chunk of money, which wasn't really enough to be making it at the scale that we did, but it did mean that when we went to people, they were already going, oh, okay, you believe in it enough that you've put all your savings in this.
Yeah.
And yeah, so some people responded really quickly, and we kind of got the money together fairly quickly, and we deliberately didn't go to any. There's a lot of funds in Britain for where public funds,
yeah.
where and a lot of those, there's jumping through hoops that you have to do in order to get it, and we were really determined with this film not to jump through any hoops, to just be saying, well, we're making it, and you can either be a part of it or you don't have to. It's entirely up to you. It doesn't matter one way or the other. We're still making it, and we were fortunate enough to get one person come in who had a decent enough chunk of money that it was like, okay, we know we can shoot this, and we can raise the rest later if we have to. But I think actually the finance came together really quickly.
Yeah, really quickly.
Yeah.
And I think people really responded to that momentum. And then again, we sort of took that to Kickstarter, and we were like, well, we know we don't want to appear on Kickstarter being like, oh, we'd like to make a movie, can you help us? It was like, no, like it's not going there and saying this won't happen without you. It's going, no, this is happening, this is a great film, you're gonna love it, but it can be better if you come and help us. And so that was, there was this one scene that sort of had lots of extras and sort of ambulances and stuff we knew would be kind of, fairly expensive, and so we were like, well, let's kickstart that one scene. So the film's going to exist come what may, and if we end up not being able to afford that scene, we'll just have to do something clever in the edit, like do some drawings or something. I don't know what we were planning. But yeah, so and that was great, because it meant you could go to Kickstarter again with that sense of momentum and just being like, well, this is going to happen, come and be part of it, which is it's really nice, and then people really responded to that, which was great.
Which is such a nice thing to hear about, because so often you do hear about these people going, well, no, I'm going to use Kickstarter to find every penny that I'm going to use to make this film. And you're kind of like, well, maybe you need to do a little work first, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
It seems a bit lazy.
Yeah. But also that thing of Kickstarter is, so often with any form of this funding, and it's and it comes down to actual funding as well, from much bigger funding from whoever it is. You need to know those people. It's very rare for them just to go, you know what, I read a thing and I loved it so much that I'm going to put in £1 million. You're kind of like, well, you've got to know them over time. They've got to know you. And the same with Kickstarter, where, the more people who've been following you and the more people that you know personally, the more likely they're going to be to want to help you. And we had some people who were tweeting and emailing, and we had some real people who were just doing everything they could to help us find the other people to help support the Kickstarter. And that was really important, because if it was just us on our own, I don't think we would have raised it.
No, not at all. No. And equally, what was also nice is you kind of when you do a Kickstarter, you always get hung up on the perks. You always get really kind of like, oh, we've got to have these really clever perks. It's going to be this, and that's what and you sort of go, are we making a film, or are we sort of selling kind of fancy T-shirts or something? And there have been so many people who pledged pretty substantial sums of money, and then we'd sort of be like, oh, I'm really sorry, we haven't sent you the signed script or whatever, and they'd be like, I just want to see the film, to be honest. Just nice to have a way to help you make this film. It looks mental. I love it. So, that's also
amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate the time. It's a fascinating film. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah. Thanks for waiting around.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, I do want to ask, so what comes next?
So...
I was going to ask. It looks like,
it's kind of it's a thriller, sort of, in the way that Nina's a horror.
Sort of,
yeah. So it's a strange one, but one where the lead character, there's a really great performance to be had for an actor who won't necessarily be always offered those kind of roles. So we're hopeful on it, and it's something that is as close to our hearts as Nina is in a different way. So hopefully it's going to be interesting and exciting in the same way. Yeah,
we've always thought that although there's a lot about it that's very different from Nina, when you see it, you're going to be like, yeah, this has to be by them, doesn't it? This has to be by the guys who made Nina Forever. It's got that same something. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I cannot wait to hear more about it and see it.
Cool, man. Thanks
very much.
Thank you
Steve.
very much. Have a great day.